Hi, my name is Dina Perlman. I'm the Executive Director of the Alan R. Perlman Foundation, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the kickoff of our 2024 ARPchives Live series. Like in years past, we will be hosting everyone from the well-known artist to emerging artists, as well as including educational and historical footage on our series. This particular premiere is focusing on someone who doesn't exactly fit either category, but is more of what I would call an unsung hero. Unsung heroes in music are the programmers, recording producers, engineers, artists, session musicians, assistants, and managers who are an enormously important part of the collective, the ensemble aspect of music making that proves we as humans need each other to succeed. Lamar and I originally met because I was looking to connect with Stevie Wonder as part of the ARP History Archives. Little did I know that he would become someone that I feel I can call a friend, someone whose incredible history and talent is known amongst many in the industry, but will be new to many of you watching today. Lamar is an incredible talent, a kind and generous spirit who nonchalantly mentions in passing his work with some of funk, R&B, and hip-hop's greatest stars. Music is in his genes, as you'll find out from his personal history. His experiences and visions were told to me like precious gems hidden in the sand. Though the internet gods were decidedly not in our favor, I thought the conversation too amazing to have to record. To paraphrase my father, I hope you enjoy this video as much as I did making it. I am here with Lamar Mitchell, who is in LA, and I'm over on the East Coast in New York. So East Coast and West Coast meeting through the ether. And I'm really pleased to have this conversation with him. We've been chatting for a few months now. We got to meet in person in San Diego area. Lamar is a self-professed all-around music guy. He's a keyboardist, a technician, a keyboard tech, an engineer, a multi-instrumentalist. You also work with kids, which
Yes, I do.
yeah, I want to hear more about that. And you've worked with some of the biggest names in the business, including Bernie Worrell, Greg Fillinganes, and Stevie Wonder. So thank you for having this interview with me. I like to kind of start from the beginning,
Okay.
from Youngstown, Ohio. So we were just talking about that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So Youngstown, Ohio. My dad was a local favorite in that town. He went by the name of Big Boogie D. Okay. And he was a blues singer slash jazz musician slash entrepreneur kind of guy who had everything from gas stations to, bands and la da 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 da. So my dad, he he uh he bought a Hammond organ when I was a kid, and that was pretty much the magnet to music for me. That was my thing. That when I saw this big Hammond B3 in our living room, it was like wow.
Wow.
And yeah, but actually before that, when I was a kid, I would see the guitar, and we had a piano in the house, and I dabbled with the guitar. Guitar was actually really my first instrument that I picked up, and he showed me how to play a major chord. I was strumming, but it wasn't the seriousness. The seriousness that got me was the organ. The organ really, you know, was like, wow, you gotta really learn how to play that thing because this is a crazy thing. My mom and my dad ended up separating, right? So my mom moved us to Cleveland, and we ended up going to a Catholic school. And before school, you went to mass, and there was that big monstrosity organ, and that thing actually scared the bejesus out of me. Like it was a total different organ than what was at my dad's house. So, I was still inquisitive about this because I didn't know the difference. So, I would sing in the choir, and we would go. The organ was up in the rafters, next to the pipes, and so we would go up these creepy steps in the back of the church, and you go up there, and there's the organ, and there's this like little creepy old man. I never forget. His name was Mr. Waters, and Mr. Waters was just a little frail guy, and he was playing this big, huge organ. It was like, okay, I guess, like I guess it's possible. And he was the sweetest guy. He actually, I told Mr. Waters, my dad has an organ. It's a Hammond. And he's like, oh, that's very nice. You want to play this one? So, I played the organ. It's like, brrr! It's like, oh, it scared the crap out of me, right? And that was the melting pot between noticing the difference, like, oh, that's a pipe organ, and then that's an electric organ. So when I would go back to my dad's house, like I was like, I would tell my dad, yeah, play the pipe organ. And dad was not like the church going guy. He was the club and the blues, musician. I don't know if you ever saw Ray Charles, but
Oh, yes.
he was on that side, like, well, the club is my church. This is how I feed you guys. So you're gonna learn, if you're gonna play this thing, you're gonna learn how to play the music that I like.
It's like, yeah, well, that's good. You got to learn how to play this, the Hammond, and play the kind of music that I like he would like for me to play, so that I can, feed my family. He says, I don't know, not that he was against church music, at all, but he he had church. He had a lot of musicians. Yeah, my dad, like I said, he was an entertainer, so he would have musicians that played in church, and Saturday night at the club, they all would start to disappear one by one. So you turn around and this guitar player has got to go because he's got to get up in the morning and
Go to church.
play in church.
Yeah.
So my dad learned how to play guitar. Then he's playing guitar, and then all of a sudden turns around and the drummer's like packing up. So my dad learned how to play drums. And as a kid, seeing this stuff, but not understanding it, I was always, wondering like why my dad was like, yo, well, you still need to learn how to play your guitar, and come over here. I'm gonna show you how to play drums. And it's just like, just giving me these mirrors of instruments. Yeah, like try to play this trumpet. Learn the trumpet, learn everything you can. And I was wondering, like, okay, this is cool, but why? And later on, I found out when I turned like 15 to 16, I would go to these, clubs with my father, and it'd be like, when the musician got up and left, it was like, you son, I need you to play drums.
Oh,
Son, guy's gone. I need you to, play organ. It's like, oh, okay. So by 15 to 16, I was like playing clubs, with my
wow.
dad. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so that's how I really became in love with the hand organ and music in general. It was because my dad heavily influenced me.
So your dad was
And
your teacher. That's amazing. That's lovely.
yeah, and
Yeah.
he also had the thing where, as growing up, kid in the ghetto with a bunch of instruments, he was like, yeah, well, you have to learn how to repair these things as well, because you're going to be on your own, gigs or whatever. And if something happens, you're going to at least have to learn how to like solder a wire. What if your guitar cable pops, or the cable comes out the microphone? You have to learn how to put it together. You're not going to be able to just go buy a cable in the middle of a show. So he sent me to a vocational school, a VOTEC school in high school, junior high, where I took 2 years of radio and television electronics.
Oh, wow.
So I learned the basics. And in the interim of that is when I started, discovering a lot of music now. As a kid, I've heard everything from the blues to the straight ahead jazz, Miles Davis, listen to the classical music, of course, being involved in the Catholic Church and everything. I even listen to like country music and, various music. We will have the shortwave radio. We tune in and listen to German music, Italian music. So, there was a love for music. But however, in the 60s, I heard Billy Preston.
Bass
bass was my introduction to synthesizers. And that just, I had wanted a synthesizer. And every time I would ask my dad for a synthesizer, believe it or not, he'd say, "Oh, son, that's just a toy. You have a Hammond organ right here. Learn this thing first. When you learn the Hammond organ, everything else is going to make sense."
Uh-huh.
And, it's like, wow, okay. So I really, really took my time and I learned everything about the Hammond organ. And I was learning the organ, the drawbars on the organ. I noticed they had different footage, like same as the pipe organ. We had the 16, the 8-foot, the 4-foot 2. Each drawbar was labeled like that. Then they had the harmonics, and for the longest, I was wondering what that meant. So then I learned it meant that was the analogy of the size of the pipes that was in the organ. The 16-foot and the 32-foot pipes made the lower sounds, and then the lower numbers made the higher pitches. And one day, just kept going to the music store, and I looked on the synthesizer and I saw the same thing, the 32, the 8, 16. I was like, so it made sense.
Made sense, yeah.
And so I kept gravitating towards it. I want a synthesizer, No, never got a synthesizer until I bought my own. And I finally bought a synthesizer. And my first synth really was a Korg MS-20. So it was sort of like a 2600, because that the first. The 2600 was really the first synth that I saw. When I saw the 2600 before I saw anything at a music store, and that was what like got me to go, holy crap. So all my life I wanted this, 2600, and Korg came out with the MS-20. I was like, this is it. So I learned that, and that was my first introduction to synthesizers. And
all right, very cool.
Meat of the story, how I met Bernie Worrell was again. So my dad, had this Hammond organ that he had to pay for as well, right? So he would rent it out to different promoters. He would, let my uncle play it or whoever, even if somebody needed it for like a church, you know, performance or whatever, my dad would rent the organ out so that he can make those payments.
You're
So
taking that
later,
big organ out of the house and back again?
yeah. And I learned how to move that organ. So when he got it, I was probably around 8 or 9 years old. That was the first one. And then later, when I became 15, he bought a second one. And the second organ was for myself. And the reason why he had the second organ is because, again, he started, playing in clubs, and sometimes the organ wouldn't be home, and I was taking lessons and everything. So he was like, well, you need an organ of your own. And I thought, meanwhile, I'm begging for a synthesizer. I'm begging. And it's like, no, I got a second organ. One Saturday, he surprised me even more. He says, son, sit down here. It's like, he pulled out this little payment book. And he's like, yeah, so I got the organ, I got a loan from the bank. And basically, we pay every month, take one of these payments and, tear it out the book, and you go down to the bank and you pay him this money. It's like maybe $35, really $35, which was a lot at that time, right? So, so it's like, oh, okay. And he hands me the book. He says, yes, so this is your book. And now when you do your little shows with your little band, you take your money and you take the $35 and, either give it to me or we'll go down there together and we're going to pay this organ off. This is when we finish this book, then the organ is yours. It's like, oh, okay. And it gave me a sense of pride at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't take it like, okay, my dad is just, giving me this, being mean and giving me this payment book.
Good
I
lesson.
actually, embraced it for some strange reason. So, I would listen to my dad's conversations that he would have with different people on the telephone. And one day my dad wasn't home and the phone rings and it's it's the promoter guy. And he's like, hey, is your dad home? I'm like, no. He says, well, have him call me because I need to rent the organ from him. It's an emergency. So, oh, yeah, really? Yeah, I got these guys coming into town and they're requesting the Hammond organ, and I need to know if your dad has one he can let us, rent for the night. So I was all excited. I'm waiting for my dad to get back home. I'm like, yeah, they can rent my organ. My dad had something to do with his organ. He had another show somewhere else. So when he comes home, I was like, Dad, the guy called and he wants to rent the organ. Can I rent him, mine? And he's like, yeah, of course. And voila, the guys that needed the organ was Parliament Funkadelic.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like 15 and a half, 16, and I had heard of Parliament Funkadelic. I had played a couple of their records, and I was just introducing myself into the funk rock phase. As a ear, I was this nerdy electronic, jazz guy. My friends were all, telling me about Funkadelic and Parliament, and so I knew about them, but I didn't know. Like I had no clue who Bernie Worrell was and how how great a musician he was. So I get a chance, to go to the concert. I asked my dad, it's like, Dad, so, we moved the organ there, we delivered the organ. And I asked my dad, I said, hey, is it all right if I go to the performance later on tonight? And he was kind of hesitant because, he had heard some stuff about George Clinton, He's a little hesitant, I won't go into details, But so he's like, I guess, just be careful, son, hanging with my older cousin, whatever. So I go to the concert, and I'm in the middle of the crowd, like way, way back, and I'm watching Bernie Worrell just tear this organ apart. He's doing all this stuff. He's playing, man, and I've never heard my organ sound like that ever.
Wow. That's my organ.
Yeah, and I'm like the kid, and of course, you know, I'm telling one of my friends that's with us, with my cousin, and of course, it gets to like, yeah, right, yeah, that's your organ. If that's your organ, let's go back there and talk to those guys. So, you know, we try to, you know, wheeze our way through the crowd, and we get, you know, near where the backstage is, and the store is like, get out of here, you know, snotty. So I never got a chance to meet that. That was like, it was the greatest thing, but I still, there was a thing that was like, now mind you, my father's organ, James Brown played my dad's organ, the other organ, Aretha Franklin, and like all these great people. And I got a chance to meet him as a kid. You know, it's like, yeah, it was like, I had the opportunity. Of course, I'm with my dad, and, you know, he's at these shows. Of course, he's going to be at James Brown. Of course, he's going to be there, or Aretha Franklin. So I get a chance to meet him and da da da. So I'm thinking, wow, you know, didn't get a chance to meet Bernie Worrell. You know, wow, okay. Fast forward, say 4 years later, I'm back home in Youngstown, Ohio. Because I used to live back and forth between Cleveland and Youngstown, Ohio. My mom lived in Cleveland. My dad lived in Youngstown. So I was like one of those Greyhound bus babies. I was on a Greyhound bus going back and forth. Right. So one year I find myself back in Youngstown, Ohio, and just chilling. I had a band called Nucleus, and we were really, really good band. It was really, you know, together. And we versatile band. And one of my friends called me from New Jersey and he says, "Hey man, everybody's talking about your band in Youngstown, Ohio. It's just, you guys aren't going to make it in Youngstown. Why don't you guys come out here to New Brunswick, New Jersey?" Now, geographically, I had an inkling, but I wasn't, you know, I'm thinking New Jersey, okay, it's on the coast, but maybe it's a little bit above, you know, North Carolina, somewhere in there, you know, somewhere like over that way, you know. And I was like, well, what's in I was like, what's in New Brunswick, New Jersey? He's like, man, well, you know, there's a lot of colleges here. I was like, okay. He says, yeah, I'm at Rutgers University and going to Rutgers, and there's a lot of places to play, man. I'm like, okay. He says, oh, yeah, by the way, you know, there's Atlantic City, New Jersey. I was like, oh, okay. And he says, oh, I'm also like 30 minutes away from Philadelphia. Okay. And just then I was like, well, let me think about it. He says, oh, and man, we're 30 minutes away from New York City. Why didn't you start with New York City?
By the way.
By the way, yeah, right. So I said, okay, you know, kind of put him a whole, you know, I had cover, and my dad was there. I said, Dad, can I go to New Brunswick, New Jersey? You know, my friend's up there. He's telling me, you know, he's close by New York City and da da da. My dad was like, oh, you need to go. You need to, like, guys are too big for this area. You need to go expand. So we went. So within a week of being in New Jersey, we're, you know, driving around different places trying to find some auditions and trying to find some clubs to play. We find a club that wanted us to audition for us, but we had to drive, you know, through this other little town called Plainfield, New Jersey. And on our way to the audition, we stopped at a gas station, just, you know, pick up some snacks, get some gas, whatever. And we see this, young lady, and she's checking us out, and we're checking her out. And she looks at our van, and she looks at our license plate. She said, "What are you guys? A funk band or something?" And we're like, "Yeah, of course. Hmm, funk band, huh?" I said, "Yeah." She says, "Well, you never believe who I have in my car. Who do you have in your car?" She says, "Bernie Worrell from Permanent Funkadelic." And if my
Your head
I
exploded.
I tell you, I was like, wow. I said, man, I gotta meet Bernie. I gotta tell him the story as he played my organ in Youngstown, Ohio. Now the thing about this particular Hammond organ, it was a vintage Model A. It looked like a Hammond B3, but it was smaller, and the drawbars are made out of platinum. They're not they're platinum drawbars. It didn't have the percussion, and it didn't have another section called the vibrato scanner in it. It was
Oh,
just like pretty much a raw organ, and it was kind of unique to like Hammond organ players. That if you saw this organ, you'll remember playing it. So I told her, I said, "Listen, if you let me speak to Bernie, he'll remember this organ." So Bernie came over, introduced himself, and came out with the story. "Bernie, you played my organ, yada yada yada. You would remember this organ if you saw it." And of course, in our van, the organ's packed with a bunch of stuff on top of it, so we weren't about to, pull it out right there. I would have, but so Bernie says, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." He says, "Where you guys headed?" We told him the club or whatever. And he says, "Cool, we're going to follow you guys. This is interesting." So they followed us to the club, to the audition. And he sat in his car and waited for us to set everything up, got everything ready. Went out there and got Bernie Worrell's. "Bernie, come in, check out. This is the organ." And he looked at the organ and he's like, "I remember this organ." And he sat there and he heard my band play and he says, "You know what? I want to produce you guys." And that was the beginning of our friendship, our relationship, our brotherhood. And from that, I literally stayed with Bernie and stayed at his home for, man, a while, and he adopted me as his protege and played in his band, and I owe so much to him. Yeah, he was the best. He's the best. He still is in my heart. Yeah. But one of the craziest things is about a week ago, I don't know if this ever happened to you or anyone out there, but when someone and love passes away and you still have their contact information in your phone, you don't delete it. Like
right.
it just stays there, right? So Bernie's in my favorites on my phone. And one day, man, probably less than 2 weeks ago, I'm looking at my phone. I was going to call my brother. So, he's in my favorites, whatever. And I'm scrolling through and I see Bernie's name and I just get one of those moments, just solitude. And I sat my phone down. I guess my hand just hit his number and I looked and it's like, it's ringing, Bernie Worrell. And I had one of those moments where it's just like tears and waterfalls coming out my eyes. I'm like, oh my God, I can't even, hear his voice anymore. I can't reach out to my friend. But yeah, it was like my heart was calling out to him still. My heart still calls out to him. He's just like, he was the guy that would pick up any time, any place he was. If I called him, he would pick his phone. really
Yeah.
have.
Those people are few and far between, and they're definitely meant to be cherished. Like your dad, it seems that he passed on some of his gifts to you as well. So you were playing organs, you both played organs, but you also learned how to play synthesizer, and he was a big synthesizer player. So tell us a little bit about what you learned from him, what you saw him play, a little bit about that side of him.
Well, some of the stuff is so magical that I still pinch myself that I had those moments with him. And so when I first met Bernie, I had my little Korg MS-20 synthesizer, and Bernie was he was the Moog and the Art Pro soloist guy. You know? So he kind of looked at my synthesizer like RCA dog. He was like, I don't understand it, but if you can make it happen, that's good. So, and I realized then, like, it's like Bernie, well, this is kind of just like the Moog, and this part is just like art, a little bit, different, but basically, if you want this sound over here, you do it like this. And if you want this sound like that, you can do this. And that's when I kind of noticed that, that wasn't the technical side wasn't his strong point. This thing, he was a true musician. And all the stuff that he got out of the synthesizer, it was because he was Bernie Worrell. It wasn't because it was the synthesizer, there were a couple of sounds on the Moog back, when I first met him that he was just oblivious to. It's like, well, I kind of remember if you put this like this, and that like that. I don't know why, but that's how you get that sound. It's like, do you know why? And I was like, well, this is the 8-foot stop and 4-foot, and he give me that look again, like the RCA dog, like, how do you know all this stuff? Like you actually know the technical side of it. So at some point, I was able to show him things on the move because a lot of times he would do things. He knew the filter knob, yeah, and he knew this other knob, but like to know his way around, like at the time, he wasn't really as versatile. And I guess after like a couple of months together, he started getting. He's like, oh, that's why that happened when I hit that knob. I used to wonder like what that really was, and he'd be like so humble, like thanks for explaining it to me like that. Because I would give him an analogy of something, and he's like, oh. But then he told me, he says, that's why I really like the Pro Soloist, because it had the names and the words, and I know if I hit this with that button, it made this sound. Oh, so I wasn't into the presets of synthesizers. I was more into, dialing everything up. I wanted to see a patch bay. I wanted to be as complicated as possible, right? And he was like, no, because it's about the music, right? And it dawned on me like, oh, you're right. And then later on in life, I just remember he would go to the music store and we would buy the most inexpensive keyboards. Like he would buy like a Kawai synthesizer because it had a stupid, silly sound in it. And he could take that super silly sound and make music out of it. Mm-hmm. And I really got it like after a year or two hanging out with Bernie and we came up with this thing. It's not the wand, it's the magician.
Oh, that's great. I love that analogy. I love that analogy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always found when I was a little girl, I went to the pro soloist. I wanted instant gratification. I didn't want to have to figure things out. And I remember, after a couple of failed attempts at trying to make sound out of a 2500, the pro soloist was like, "Oh, I get this." An oboe. Perfect.
Right. Yeah. That's it.
And I mean, I love that you guys taught each other. I mean, there's a wonderful thing about teaching, which I'm sure you've experienced, is that you end up learning so much from your own students. It's a reciprocal relationship.
Yes.
It's not just, throwing something at someone. It's getting the feedback, and that's beautiful.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Bernie, he taught me a lot, and gave me so many opportunities in the music industry. When first, couple of the first like big records I played on was through Bernie Worrell. He did a record with the B-52s and Fred Snyder. I did another big R&B record called Juicy Fruit, in which I ghosted for Bernie. Yeah, and then to play in his bands, the Woo Warriors, and we toured all over the world. We toured Japan and Germany, and we did France, Germany, Japan. Played a lot of colleges here in the States, and it's just the most fun time in my life.
What brought you to LA?
So before all this, I was a music director for a couple of other big R&B groups. I had a chance to work with New Edition,
Oh, okay.
and then I was the music director and keyboard player for this R&B group Jodeci, and did all the stuff for the record label. It's called Uptown Records. So we did the MTV Unplugged, where we had Mary J. Blige, Jodeci, his name Heavy D, and a few other rappers and stuff like that. So I was this guy who was doing like all this stuff, all this, music directing, keyboard player, and playing. And I would often call my dad and say, Dad, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. One day my dad said, "Hey man, all that's good, but you're just a monkey on the circus, man. You need to get your own road show." Reevaluate everything that I was doing. And that's when I kind of really changed my hat. And it was like, okay, I want to produce records. And at the time, I was always hired as a programmer. People would hire me as a programmer. Hey, man, come in and program drums. Hey, man, come in and program my song. I was a part of all these great records and doing all this stuff. And I realized that I was just a programmer. And I didn't know that I was a producer. So one day, a friend of mine calls me and says, "Hey, man, I want you to produce a record." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Me produce?" I said, "Yeah. I watched you in the studio. You went in and you did all the drums. You programmed the drums. You recorded it. You did all the stuff. You put the song together. He says, you produced the record." He said, "The way I feel about it is you were the producer and the guy who was producer he was just the guy, who put up the money. And that's when the bell went off. It was like, I could hear my father say, "Yeah, you got to get your own road show. Stop being a circus, being a monkey on the circus." So I pulled together all my resources and my money, and I built a studio. And I started the attempt of producing records and producing artists. So I started producing an artist and started producing different people.
And that was in New Brunswick.
That was that was in, by then I moved to Asbury Park, Long Branch, New Jersey. So I built a studio in Long Branch, New Jersey, and I started producing different people. And one guy I started producing, he was really good. I started producing this guy and producing together, and we had all these songs, and they were beautiful songs. And this is like top of 2000, and he said to me, he's like, "Oh yeah, Lamar, this is really good, man. I'm gonna go out to California and try to shop my deal and go out there and write some more songs and try to shop myself for a record deal." Now, I had put some time into this guy, and I was like, man, I can't let this guy just get away from me just like that.
Huh.
Going to California, I'm like, I'm going too, And he was like, "Really? You're going to just leave all the stuff out here?" I'm like, "Yeah, if you're going to go to California, you want to go with you. I mean, I'm not, it's not going to, leave just like, let you just leave just like that." It took us maybe like 2 years, and we got a deal with Warner Brothers.
Oh, nice.
And so the record deal ended. So when it ended, I went out to West LA Music, and I got a second job as a salesman / keyboard repair guy. But at this time, I kind of knew the game, right? So when I went in, we had, the internet is big now. You had these, super savvy sales guys. So as most music stores, nothing worked in the music store. So most of the guys, they were smart and savvy. When the customer came in, they grabbed them right away before they can go to the keyboard department. And they showed them on, website. "Yes, this is it right here, blah, blah, blah. I could save you, $300, and they'll close the deal right there." I'm sitting there in the back, waiting for, somebody to come back and,
Put their hands on it.
yeah. So my manager at the store, he saw my passion, and he just waited one day and he says, "Hey man, I want you to stay after store hours. I need your expertise on something." And of course, it was a sell for Stevie Wonder. Stevie had closed. They had closed, closed the store hours, and he came in after hours, and that's how my relationship with Stevie.
Okay.
He ended up hiring me, and blah blah blah. The rest is history. Yeah. So I came out here to, and I accomplished what I came out here to accomplish. It's just that the situation just changed, in the blink of an eye.
You have an amazing affinity for being able to find those doors that have opened.
Well, I know that there's a divine entity. Like, I know, okay?
You got some deep ancestors watching out for you, right?
Yes.
Wow.
I know that there's a divine entity watching over me. So, and again, I have to say that it was my dad again, in a weird way this time, to assess me to where I'm at right now. So I'm gonna tell you a really kind of deep story. So You know, because my dad had diabetes in his later years. He ended up going blind. Before there was a word accessibility, you know, I would go back to Ohio to check on my dad, and it wasn't to have a pity party, but it was to help him just to be able to live and just to be able to get around without, you know, breaking things. So I would help him, you know, organize his little things, you know, his little tape recorder. He loved his tape recorder. He loved to be able to, you know, pick up his guitar, and he had this little Insta electric piano that he would like to. He loved to sit at that thing and just, you know, poke around and play his blues. So I kind of put everything in such a way where he could get to it easily.
Mhm.
And this again says before all the accessibility and this all this stuff. And, you know, I learned how to walk with him and how to do different things. And
Get through the
I
day.
didn't know, yeah, I didn't know that prepared me for where I am now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, it's my dad's. He's the one that put me in electronic school. He's the one that made me be a multi instrumentalist. Because if it wasn't like for understanding drums and guitar and the trumpet, I don't think that I would be as great as a producer or programmer without knowing the real parameters of those instruments and those sounds and the whole experience and just being around all the musicians and, you know, people I got a chance to meet in lifetime.
Mm. Mm. That's great. That's great.
But yeah, of course, the story is truncated down so small. You know, let's say I've met all the great organ players from Jimmy Smith to Jack McDuff to all those guys.
Okay.
So, you know, my dad would have battled the organ player guys in Youngstown, Ohio. So all the great organists, including his brother, his name is Winston Walls. And Winston would battle all these organists, and they would have these shows and matinees in Youngstown and Pittsburgh, and I would get a chance to meet all the guys. Met George Benson before he was the big George Benson when he was playing, you know, jazz guitar, and just a whole you know, narrative of inspirational jazz musicians from that area.
Wow, that's a privilege. That's something you'll always have. Huh. So, in LA, what was it like to work in the music industry in LA versus the East Coast? I mean, I know you were working in a different capacity. You were producing only for a few years in on the East Coast, right? Before you came
No,
to
you know what? So New York, I cut my teeth because I was I learned from, you know, all the great mistakes from myself, even from Bernie, like this the lessons of the business of music. Because as you know, Bernie didn't get a fair shake on the business side of everything that he was involved with, just because people, you know, in that era really took advantage of everyone. You know, they would pay all the musicians great, you know, great money, but you know, in a sense, we were producers and we were writers, but they would pay us only for the musician side of it. So there, you know, there was a lot of stuff where I'm going to say, you know, Bernie, myself, and you know, not only just us, but a lot of musicians, we really got shunted out of the business side, whether it was, you know, production, whether it was publishing, songwriting, you know, we just, that side of the business just was not, you know, very known. It wasn't going to be shared with, you know. I started producing when they started calling me a programmer. You know what I mean? Like I learned. So here's the thing: before MIDI came out, you know, I always envisioned some way being able to connect the computer with the keyboard, and I didn't know what this was going to be. I had no clue. So in 1983, I was playing with a group called the Manhattans. They had a record called "You Are My Shining Star." They had a couple of big hits. So I ended up touring the world with the Manhattans and going to Japan when the DX7 came out and MIDI was introduced.
Okay.
So I came back from Japan with a drum machine, a DX7, and a bunch of stuff, sequencers. And when I landed in the US, I basically woodshedded myself for like 6 months and learned everything about MIDI and that whole electronic, you know, music curriculum that was so brand new. It was bleeding edge technology basically then. So I was one of the only guys that I knew, you know, of my ethnicity that had a rig and that knew how to actually use it and make money. So I would get these calls to, you know, come and program some drums or come and program a bass line or come program some music for us. And that's, yeah, that was my introduction to production. So, like I said, I was producing, but I didn't know I was producing. So from the early 80s all throughout my thing, hey, my cat wants to come in. Anyway, yeah. So all throughout that, I would say from 84 through 2000 was when I really, you know, so I was 15, 16 years of just perfecting the craft, you know, of becoming a producer. And I still didn't get all the legal and the business knowledge until 2001, 2002, when, you know, we started procuring this record deal with Warner Bros. And that's when the, you know, all the intricacy came in to learn, you know, what a publisher is, what publishing is, and how to get your money and mechanical side and this and that. So there was a lot of years just, you know, kind of, a lot of projects kind of burnt out, just not knowing, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, trying to get the money, the financial side of it, let alone, you know, try to get that part straight, and then trying to understand the business, and then, you know, there's no Google back then.
Right.
There was no YouTube, you know. You hear about these mistakes that people were, you know, getting involved in, but there was no, you know,
Yeah.
there were real answers.
Yeah. Either trial by error or read
Exactly.
the manual, I guess.
Manuals, oh my God. I had so many business of music books that every last one of them contradicted the next one. You know, it's like, and none of them were layman's, language. Where it's say, hey, you are all these guys right here. Anytime you go in the studio with your equipment and your ideas, you're all these guys right here. You're from A, B, C, D. You wear like 7 hats. So it took a lot. It took a lot. I have a really nice setup now. And this is my second time collecting. I used to have all vintage stuff. I used to have everything in New Jersey, Hammonds and pianos and everything. So, I used to have a couple of vintage Oberheims, a couple of vintage Modes and Prophet 5. So now I have all the new stuff. So I have the new Modes, the new Prophet, the new Oberheim, the new this and that. And I love it. I love it. I love everything, today. It's and then also we have the virtual version inside the computer, all the plugins and stuff like that. And it's all good, I'm one of those guys again that know it's not about the magic wand. I see I see guys today, they make such beautiful music with the plugins, and some stuff sounds so good and so real that maybe there's a 5% or 10% difference, like only a purist would know, but they get the point. They get their point across with using what they have. Now in my own personal, heart and soul, I love the real stuff. I will go through anything to be able to play a real synthesizer rather than plugin.
Yeah.
But there's been times when I had to use the plugin just because it was the most convenient thing to use. And, I got the job done. And that was the most important thing, was to get the job done and make the client happy. And at some point, the client didn't care because they wanted the record and they wanted the magic of me, and it wasn't about the instrument.
I always have a feeling, I always had a philosophy that the limitations can sometimes breed more creativity than if you have everything on your fingertips. So
such a true statement. Because sometimes, all this, I have this room full of beautiful gear, and sometimes I go down to my lab and I have nothing here, creativity. But then I get home and I'll fire up my iPad and I'm like, there's an idea, and it's like, okay, let me call that virtual Arp Odyssey and play around with some stuff, and it's like, oh yeah. Now get the idea down, and then I go down to the lab and make it come alive,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's why that's like sketchbooks.
Yeah.
I like to make analogies with visual art and audio art and audible art. Sometimes there's we sketch things out, we play, we practice, we play some more. And play, I mean play like a kid. You've been working with kids you started during the pandemic, is that correct?
I started a little bit before the pandemic. I have a nonprofit called KidsConnectTV.org. and give back to the inner city youth kids, give them a chance to learn, music, keyboard, whether it's keyboards, guitar, music production, uh, voice, singing, whatever. I try to teach them they whatever they want to. It's kind of again a non-scripted class where there isn't this big syllabus thing that I'm doing, like specifically. I kind of tailor it to each child. And, first I see where the attention span is with them and how far they want to go. And
Yep.
then I just you know, if it's just first to introduce them to something, and it's again up to the parents too, right? Because sometimes the parents don't have all the resources to bring them each and every week, or mom or dad has to work that weekend, or whatever it is. So I can't make it like this, super curriculum, and you can't miss a day and you're going to fail. And so I don't take that approach to it. I basically just try to keep each child interested in the lane that they want to be in. So, for example, I have one young lady. She's 12 years old, so she already takes piano lessons. She can outread me as far as like putting a sheet of music up and just read. She's brilliant. However, she wants to know like how to make a beat. Well, basically, and I broke it down to her. It's like, you want to learn production. You want to learn how to produce. You want to learn why. Why is that record have that drum beat? How was it made? When the person sings, she was really interested one month. She just wanted to sing through auto tune. She wanted to hear her voice through auto tune. She was like, Mr. K. They call me Mr. K. Okay, my other production name is Kronick. Okay, so they call Mr. K. I just want to hear what auto tune does. What is auto tune? I want to know. So I explain what auto tune is and how it helps a vocalist achieve correct pitches to the notes that they're attempting to sing. And that was just such a thing that when she heard the difference between her singing with auto-tune and without auto-tune, the next time she came to sing, it was almost like she had auto-tune on her voice.
So she learned
that it's about singing that correct pitch and getting up to that note. And something in her little brain worked it out where it's like, no, you have to get to that note as quick as possible. And by her being a piano player, I was able to show her the notes that she's singing. And the difference is, when she's not singing, I took a pitch bend knob and just bent the pitch a little bit. It's like, see, this is the note you were attempting to sing, and this is the real note. And with that was a lesson that I was just so happy to teach, just and watching the aha moment in her face when she got it. Like,
love that.
Yeah, it's like, oh. But yeah, the next week she was singing like she had auto tune. So this week is so funny. We're working on a Harry Styles song. So first she wanted to learn the drum beat. okay? And I made her program the drum beat. So she programs the drum beat, and she's like just playing along, listening and singing along. So then I showed her the chords, and she learned the chords with her right hand. And so she's playing along and she's singing, and she's playing it along with the drum machine. Now, granted, she's used to reading music. Her piano teacher makes her read music, and so I said, well, my method is when I go to play with all these guys, there's no sheet music on stage. You can't read the stuff. You have to learn it by listening to it, and then you have to memorize it. And then I tell her, reading music is great, but I know a guy who's so great of a musician, and he cannot read music just because of certain circumstances.
Right.
So reading music is great, but God gave you 2 ears. You have to be able to hear it, and you have to know the theory of it. So I'm teaching her theory, teaching her music production, and this weekend, just yesterday, so I switched it up. I showed her the lead line with the synthesizers playing on the Harry Styles record. Taught her the chords for her left hand. So now she's playing the synthesizer line and the chords. She programmed the drums, and now she's trying to be able to sing the record. So it's just just one kid just right now, and it's got my heart just like,
yeah, wide open.
Yeah,
wide open. Do you feel your father and Bernie when you teach? Do you feel them?
all the time, all the time, all the time, all the time. I know, I know Bernie's always just like right beside me, even like like times like this. I feel the love. I feel this. I feel the spirit of my dad as well. Yeah, those two dear, dear, dear spirits. Bernie was like my big brother of the music industry.
What a blessing.
Yeah.
Yes. What do you see for the future of your not-for-profit?
I'm taking it one step at a time. I'm hoping to get another private donor at some point, and maybe to expand, a few more students, and maybe another instructor to come along with me. I want someone who can teach guitar and voice. So I know a lot of young kids are inspired to sing, and I feel as though for some reason the guitar needs a little bit more push these days, as far as like with the youth. Keyboards are more common with producers who make electronic music and make all type of whatever, hip hop and R&B. There's a computer and a keyboard. However, the guitar is a whole different thing, and I don't see a lot of guitar players, not in my room, but I would love to teach more guitar and guitars.
Oh boy, what a interesting time to be on this planet.
Man,
Just one more little question, and then I think we should probably end. Just what are you listening to music-wise now, besides the work that you do and the people you work with? What does Lamar come home and say? Oh, you know what? Flip on, listen to something that has nothing to do with work right now.
And that would be absolutely nothing. Yeah, silence is golden. Like when I run a tap in now, um, I try to tune out. There's so much, um, there's so much in my head, and sometimes it's just about taking time to rewind my memories and and my experiences, and to go back and to if I can just review 1/4 of that stuff, like let's go back to the days when uh, with Bernie and the Blue Warriors and the music that we played and all that stuff. Um, that's an inspiration for for today. Like there's they always say there's nothing new under the sun. So what we're listening to today, it's a lot of remanufactured ideas. You know, even when I do pick up something I mean, they're not saying anything bad about the new stuff, because there is a lot of great new stuff out there. And when I get a chance to, I breeze through it, but to sit there and to actually finitely listen to anything, I don't really have the time or the desire. I'd rather hear silence and then go from there, and then go back and listen to something retro. Like I'll put on some old Herbie Hancock records, and like Thrust, and just listen to some of those solos from back then, or some Chicorea or George Dew record from the 70s or 80s, and kind of just like let that recapture my sensations from when I was that age, and when I first heard it, and then just try to listen to that and get my inspiration from that.
It's interesting. Remember when we were chit-chatting the very beginning, and I was saying how I'd been shocked to find out that Funky Worm, and Junie Morrison had a pro soloist, and all
Yeah,
this stuff. Going back and listening to the stuff in context after the fact is really different than hearing it for the first time. Um, you're never going to get that first time, but the appreciation keeps changing, I think. When it gets contextual, all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, look what they, and you think, oh my God, that was 50 years ago or 45 years ago. How, and pretty innovative, pretty amazing energy, courage, amazing stuff. Yeah.
yeah. Sometimes when I listen to those records, though, I mean, I can actually remember
Where you were?
where I was. Yeah, and and I'm like, wow. I remember when I first heard that, and I was thinking to myself, like, what is that? Like, how, like, and now I'm sitting in front of an Oberheim, or sitting in front of an ARP Odyssey or 2600, going, would I have thought to do that back, even now, would have thought to have made that particular sound, you know, went to that place, with this instrument. So yeah, sometimes I just go back retro. My thing is I love listening back, to those gems, those secret gems. And I know there's every time I listen to something, it's just like I find something I missed or the thing that was.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate this. This is really, really great stuff. You're a great storyteller.
Thank you so much.
Great raconteur. You can add that to your list of talents. And yeah, to be continued, I hope.
Please, yeah, we'll move forward one day and get a chance to speak on a whole lot of stuff. Yeah, a lot of great stuff. Like I say, this one is super condensed, so we'll fill up the whole internet with stories.
Yeah, yeah, cool. All right.